What's something 99% of people do wrong but have no idea? Story 1, argue. Modern media has shown us that being loud and throwing accusations around is the best way to argue. The amount of fallacies and angry vibes that I encounter when just trying to make a point is ridiculous. I hear a ton of red herring and straw man arguments as well. People not responding to actual claims being made, preferring to go off on tangents they themselves created. And then if they don't get their way immediately, they say you are just trying to win, despite never actually refuting your point or presenting a valid counterpoint. Story 2. Risk assessment. Busy worrying about low probability matters while ignoring high probability ones. If everyone in the U.S. properly assessed risk, they'd be far more scared of cars and sitting, and far less scared of things like terrorists and sharks, for example. Story 3. Please stop putting library books back on the shelf you took them from. It's often better to leave them neatly on a return cart, on a table, or at the front desk, depending on your library. We scan books that are used without checkout to add them to our circulation statistics. It helps us prove traffic and learn which items engage the community. Flagging items as used in-house doesn't require identifying information either. It's anonymous. Story 4. Critical thinking. Have your own thoughts about things that are happening or that you hear about. Connect ideas together just for funsies and compare facts with other facts. Critical thinking is when you don't simply take what you receive at face value. People seeing things that you don't aren't overthinking. They're simply thinking their own thoughts. They might be wrong, but it's good to practice anyway. Better than underthinking. Way, way better than taking everything at face value. Story 5. Left-hand turns. So many people cut too soon and almost clip you while you're waiting at the red. You should go far enough into the intersection before starting your turn that you are driving straight by the time you pass my car. Driving instructor corrected me on this right away, but too many people never got the memo. Story 6. I'm looking at my fellow dudes here specifically, but boy is there a thing with not thoroughly washing. I always wondered why it seemed like I could never shower as fast as other guys I knew. It felt like there was some inscrutable life hack that I was missing where one could get fully clean in 30 seconds. Upon digging, I was horrified to discover that a lot of dudes simply don't wash their legs/feet. They just let the soap run down their body and assume it's clean. The scrubbing is the mechanism that makes things clean, and the soap is just there to help the water do its job. And gents, I don't know what the hang-up is with your own butt. Just get up in there and scrub your undercarriage. That's one of the worst areas for odor and bacteria, and it's just so nasty that you'd think cleaning there is gross, but just wetting down the filth and drying off is not. Do better. When my wife and I first lived together, she also noticed that I took long showers, not any longer than her, mind. And she asked about it. I explained that a lot of guys don't clean themselves properly, and I could see a wave of realization about other men before me wash over her. She has had zero objections to my routine as a result. Story 7, painting their homes. Stop dry rolling the wall. If you have to push on the roller to get paint out of it, put some more paint on the damn roller. Roll all the way from top to bottom every stroke, or you'll see those random splotches in the sheen after it dries. Stop cutting around plates. Take them off and roll right up to the hole. Pull your tape before the paint is cured, or it'll take chunks of paint off your corners when it comes off. Story 8. Say standard time when for 8 months out of the year, they mean daylight time. Arizona and Hawaii are the only 2 states that don't observe daylight saving time, and for all the rest of us, we should say Pacific Daylight Time, Mountain Daylight Time, Central Daylight Time, or Eastern Daylight Time. For the 8 months, we move our clocks ahead by 1 hour. Story 9. People say they are jealous when they mean they are envious. Envy occurs when someone else has something you want. If someone got a new boyfriend and you wish you had him, you are envious, not jealous. Jealousy is when you already have something and fear another person will take it away. If you have a boyfriend and that girl at the bar is flirting with him, then you are jealous. Story 10. Somewhere in your car, there is a dial or switch which changes the angle that your dipped headlights shine at. I can say with confidence that in the modern Fords, it's a center button in the middle of the lights dial. Yeah, go ahead and park your car in front of a wall or something so you can see where the headlights line is and try it for yourself. Now turn that sucker down a few notches so it stops blinding me when I drive at night. Also, a fun fact. If you drive with a heavy load in the back of your car, it will angle the car a little differently to how it normally drives. Consider changing your headlight setting on those occasions. Okay, cheers. Story 11. Use soap. Soap doesn't clean much by itself. Soap breaks the surface tension of water so water can clean. That means getting some liquid soap on your dry hands and rubbing it around before rinsing them off is doing it wrong. Get your hands wet first, then soap, then scrub, and finally rinse. Story 12, argue. The average person either doesn't know how to or chooses not to argue in good faith. For most people, it seems like winning an argument is defined by winning the audience or delivering the best roast. The majority of people, including me, will argue like dickheads because optics matter more than logic. Everyone has probably experienced losing an argument that they were 100% right about because the audience/other party didn't actually care about the logic soundness of the argument. Story 13. I've been a cycling enthusiast garage mechanic for over 20 years. The amount of people I see riding down the street bouncing up and down on tires that have 15 psi. If you hate your bike commute because it's so tough, try inflating your tires. There are many factors at play when it comes to the efficiency of a bicycle, but I would argue tire pressure has the biggest effect. There are different reasons to want different pressures. For example, with mountain biking, you generally want to go as low as you can without bottoming out your tire on your rim. If you're doing some amount of gravel or dirt path riding, you might want slightly less pressure. But if you're just riding on the road or sidewalk, look at your sidewall to see what the max allowable pressure is, and do that. Story 14. Talking. I've given up with most people. They don't listen. Just want to spew their own self-absorbed crap into your face. When you try and say something, they talk over you. On the very rare occasion I've met someone who doesn't, I'm speechless for a few moments. It's a bit like driving behind a BMW and they actually indicate to change lanes. Story 15. Setting up their central heating and thermostat to work the way they actually want them to. Yes, I know you've turned the temperature up, but it won't come on until the time you have set it to come on. Yes, I know you've set it to be on now, but the desired temperature is below the air temperature. It won't come on either. Yes, I know your bills are massive and it's too hot. You've turned it to max and set it to run 24/7. Yes, I set it how you wanted, but the thermostats on each radiator valve need to be set right for the room. That's why that one room doesn't have any heating. Story 16. By wrong, I'm assuming you mean incorrectly, as we do tons of wrong stuff. I would say job interviews, majority of people approach them as they are being interviewed. I have always used it as an opportunity to interview the company because they will be the lucky ones if I choose to work with them. And I must say, it is extremely satisfying to turn down a company when they offer you the position. Story 17. Pronounce Caesar. I guess it's fine if you're talking about the dressing, maybe, but it just sounds cringe. I thought half the characters in Fallout New Vegas were saying it wrong. The other half say it like most of us. Looked it up and turns out they were saying it right, or at least historically accurately. To say it correctly, you want to say something like Kaisar. Hard K, I, and Sar rhymes with car. Of course, if you do, most people won't know what you're saying. Sometimes correct isn't right. That said, if you ever find yourself back in time face to face with a Caesar, I advise you to bend the knee and say his name correctly. He might have you crucified if you call him Caesar, or he may make you his jester, depending on his mood. And which Caesar? Story 18. Operate their vehicle's indicator. Most seem to apply it as a formality, not as a means of communicating. I see people using it on a sharp turn. I see people using it as they're taking the turn. The rule is to employ your indicator about a block away or some length of time so that drivers around you know what's going to happen beforehand. Story 19. Your side mirrors are adjusted improperly and it's a bit dangerous with an easy fix. Most four-door sedans and SUV-sized vehicles don't have much, if any, of a blind spot. Your side view mirrors are supposed to watch the side of your vehicle, so the closer those side view mirrors are to being adjusted properly, the smaller that zone is, where a car isn't visible in your side view mirror. People commonly use their side view mirrors as secondary rear view mirrors, and it's a bit dangerous to do that. Plus, totally eliminates the utility of your actual rear view mirror. The easiest fix. For either side, sit in an upright driving position and adjust the mirror until your own vehicle is just barely visible in it. Adjust it a little more past that, and what you should have is a mirror which looks down the lane beside you rather than back into your own lane. You shouldn't be able to see much or any of your own vehicle in your side view mirror, because if you think about it, that is a total waste of mirror space. Story 20. Aim their mirrors correctly on their car. They should be aimed out so that you can see your blind spots. If you aim them straight back, you will not see anything in your blind spot. A good rule of thumb is that if you can see your car in your left or right mirrors, they are aimed incorrectly. Aim your mirrors out more. Story 21. Put those croissant-shaped neck pillows behind their necks, making their throats bow out like Mr. Burns. It's for when you're sleeping while sitting and your head falls forward. It goes under your jaw to support the weight of your head and stop your neck from kinking. Story 22. Gym. People always get hung up on what weight they are lifting, but most people don't realize execution of correct form is probably the most crucial thing to getting results. not just how much you were able to move. Reason is you can move things in one exercise by incorporating muscles that are not meant to be used in that exercise to move the weight, whether you are conscious that you are doing it or not. This takes more load off of the muscle group that the exercise was designed to work out and distributes that load between all the muscles you are unconsciously or consciously using to try and move the weight. This results in much less muscle activation in the muscle that the exercise is meant to train, meaning very little, if any, gains to be had. And even if you get gains, you are going to be getting it so much slower than you would be getting had you had the right form from the start. Story 23, landscaping. Most houses or businesses landscaped where I am in the U.S. are planted with non-native, sometimes invasive plants. They do nothing for our pollinators, birds and wildlife, and our pollinators are seeing a really big decrease in numbers. The real problem is habitat loss from farms and infrastructure, pesticide and drought, but people can fight back by planting native plants in their yard. Every little bit counts. Story 24. Install car seats or strap kids in incorrectly. If the chair wiggles, it's too loose. No, I don't care that you want to protect your expensive leather seats from indents. Cars are replaceable. More than 2 fingers under the 3, 5-point straps, also too loose. Baby in a puffy coat that gives them more movement against the straps, yep, loose. Baby facing forward too young? Them not seeing you is safer than a developing neck with whiplash. That's lifetime damage. Story 25. Breathing and posture, if a shittin' of fantasy martial arts media is correct, and I suspect it may be more than just fiction. I knew a guy in college who ran absolutely silently. He could be wearing tap shoes and a backpack with a jar of pennies inside, and you would not hear him run. He said it was all about breathing and posture. Story 26. Plan for their final years. Holy crap, in the U.S., nursing homes can cost $10-15K per month. When you finally end up on Medicaid, the paperwork is huge and they take everything. They go back 5-10 years before, too. No will not override it. Look at long-term care insurance and putting things into trusts. Story 27. Whenever people phone in a reckless driver, they do not follow the reckless vehicle until police arrive. 99% of the time, whenever a reckless driver is called into 911 dispatch, they'll say, a blue Honda Tag XXX is driving all over the road. He is probably drunk. Then the caller says, okay, send the cops. I have to go, bye. What happens then is dispatchers have to communicate that information to the road patrol. By the time this has been communicated, about 45 seconds or so has passed. By the time the officer gets into his car and pulls out onto the road, another 15 seconds has passed. That is important because if a vehicle is traveling 60 miles per hour, that means they have now traveled an entire mile from the last known destination, with dozens of turns between their initially spotted location, and by the time the officer gets there, there's zero possibility that driver that could have killed somebody will ever be found or held accountable. The caller didn't stay behind the reckless driver. They went about their business, and to this moment, likely believe that the reckless driver was eventually pulled over. Newsflash, he wasn't and never is. Source. I've responded to over 100 reckless driver calls the past year, and maybe 2 of the situations the caller actually followed the vehicle to lead to a traffic stop. Story 28. How to formulate an opinion on something. I've seen way too many people have strong opinions on things or people they have little idea about, and when you face them with the facts, they show reluctance to change their mind. Sometimes it's wise to have a balanced, two-sided opinion on things like, I feel like X is bad in __ ways, but is good in __ ways. So overall, it depends on how you look at it, rather than fully focusing on the pros or fully on the cons. Story 29. You should not run water in the sink before running the garbage disposal. Do you put food in your mouth, then drink liquid before you start chewing? No, because you don't want whole pieces going down your throat before you have a chance to chew them up. Same logic applies. If you start running water first, you'll likely get something into the pipe that will clog. I learned my lesson the hard way. Story 30. Boil eggs, I guess. Just found out everyone in my friend group just puts the eggs in cold water, puts them on the stove and leaves them for like 20 minutes, then pulls them off. Always complain about how hard and rubbery they are and say they don't like hard-boiled eggs. Them seemed surprised when I handed them a medium-boiled egg I did, astonished at how it doesn't smell like sulfur and isn't rubbery AF. Story 31. One thing that 99% of people do wrong without realizing it is seeking advice from Reddit instead of consulting actual professionals, and then treating that advice like gospel. While Reddit can be a great place for discussion and shared experiences, it's also full of misinformation, half-truths, and personal anecdotes that don't always translate to good advice. Whether it's medical issues, legal matters, or financial decisions, too many people trust random internet strangers over trained experts, often making their situations worse in the process. Story 32, Gym, is not that hard, but not that easy. It takes 20-40 minutes for the average person 3 times per week to do a very good training, which you will obviously notice in months, if not weeks. Train hard when you are training. Rest properly between sets. Do 3-4 exercises, 1-3 sets, close to failure and done, home. No need to spend 2 hours, you're not competing. But you can't be with your phone in the middle of the leg extension because you're not even trying. If people realized how easy gym could actually be to show results for normal humans, I'm sure they would go much more. People go to the gym for 2 hours in January, burn themselves with an impossible program they took from a professional influencer, failed, and decided the gym was not for them. Story 33. Most people don't drink enough water throughout the day. They think they're hydrated because they feel fine. But dehydration can have subtle effects like tiredness, headaches, and trouble focusing. The body doesn't always show obvious signs that it's thirsty until it's already running on empty. Try drinking water regularly, even if you're not thirsty, and you'll feel the difference. Trust me, your brain and body will thank you. Story 34. Seeing your doctor is useless if you aren't paying attention to blood work. Get a blood panel every year, and only see a doctor if you need one. It's easy and even cheap. U.S. online website called Walk-in Lab allows you to just buy basic blood tests without doctor's orders. You want to buy the CMP and CBC. You can read the results yourself. With these in your hand, it's easier to get help from a free clinic type of doctor. Make appointment with clinic for 10 days out. Get blood work 5 days out. They email you the results. Print them and ask clinic guy to help you improve your numbers if needed. Story 35. Dieting. Man, there's a way to do it. Once I asked my classmate who say he wants to bulk, so I asked what's your calorie intake and how much surplus you are going. He said something like 2,200 but wasn't confirming, or it's like it does not matter. Yep, it does not when you are in the fitness for like 5 years or less. Depend. But when you are starting out, it's the fucking most important thing. Story 36. Attitudes. People very often put off an off-putting attitude unintentionally and get pushed back accordingly. This cements a defensive mentality and also makes that person's attitude more off-putting and reinforces this further. Like talking at someone in short, sharp sentences, bluntly, often with a demanding tone, comes across as insufferable, but is often how people just speak. Also, being negative makes you a bit of an emotional vampire and pushes others away, welcomes the negative prone into your life more. Story 37. Put up blanket statements without actual data, thereby invalidating their statements. Instead of using something like most people or a plausible majority, said persons will throw around stats that are hyperbole and ultimately dumbing down society's curiosity for knowledge. Here's an example of what this looks like. What's something 99% of people do wrong but have no idea? Story 38. Lifting weights with momentum. You're not supposed to swing the weight up, you're supposed to lift it and then lower it. I see so many people, usually men, throwing their weights because it's too heavy and they're relying on momentum. That's how you hurt yourself. Your only competition is you. Lift smart. Story 39. Manually turning on headlights, which in turn turns on your ever-important taillights. When there's any sort of visibility challenge during the day, you must turn on your headlights so that drivers behind you can see where you are. I just drove 7 hours through winter conditions in daylight, and literally 9/10 cars had no taillights. And even worse, many cars do not turn on headlights automatically at night, which means the back of the car is virtually invisible, and folks just trust that, well, the front lights are on, I must be okay. Story 40. Learning. This may just be true to my life experiences, but so many people I know have associated going to school, private or public mandated, and pursing higher education as having some sort of exclusive knowledge that you can't find elsewhere, then graduate and completely digress in their knowledge. School can be a great tool, but it doesn't teach you how to learn. My grandparents taught me at a young age that you will die never knowing everything that's out there, and that you have to continue trying to learn new things for your entire life if you really want to live it to the fullest. Schools teach you to pass a test, but if you know how to truly learn new things on your own, the school of life will teach you more than any private or public education ever will. Story 41. Set their side mirrors in their vehicle. Most people adjust them so all 3 mirrors are just giving a rear view, with many I gotten being so bad that the side mirrors were 90% quarter panel with just a sliver of view of what's behind the car. Lean over and put your head against the driver window, then adjust the mirror so you can just barely see the quarter panel. Then lean right over the console and do the same to the passenger mirror. Then when you're sitting in driving position, you'll be able to see what's behind you in the center mirror. By the time it's not visible in that mirror, you'll see it in the side mirror. By the time it's not visible in the side mirror, it will be easily visible out of the side window. Any potential blind spots will be many car lengths away from you instead of right next to you. Story 42, wash their hands. It's wet hands. Apply soap, scrub for 20 seconds, rinse hands. Most people seem to do soap first, then wet, which washes most of the soap away. At least they attempt, though. Can't tell you how many people just leave the bathroom without washing their hands. Story 43, judge. People really be out here judging others for shit that is not that big of a deal. But people who are actually horrible deep down usually get a free pass because they're good at hiding it. Y'all need to be far more judgmental of those PPL. There are tells. Just don't be caught up judging people who are just enjoying life. And it's almost obvious when you actually pay attention. Story 44. Brushing, then rinsing out their mouth. You're supposed to keep that fluoride, or equivalent, in your mouth so it can help remineralize your teeth over time. If you find that gross, you can brush, rinse your mouth, and then just put some paste in your mouth, spit excess, and go about your day. Story 45. Choosing their life partner, if Reddit is anything to go by. People are choosing based on current chemistry, Yule attraction, limerence, and the honeymoon period. This is a terrible idea that will almost always fail. You should choose someone who would be a good business partner with which to do the business of life. Someone whose character, values, mission, actions, and histories past is aligned with the future you want. Story 46. Most people treat life like this. Enjoy teens and 20s, work hard 30s and 40s, and then they reach 50, broke, in debt, divorced, depressed, and completely unfulfilled and dissatisfied in life. You should instead work hard during your teens and 20s, and then you can enjoy the entire rest of life in peace. Story 47. Conversation. People tend to use large, elaborate, excessive words as well as repeat themselves again and again. I find the repeating thing to be especially true in Star Wars YouTube videos, though that isn't a conversation exactly. The best quote I've ever heard from a TED Talk and used very often is, "A good conversation should be like a mini skirt, long enough to cover the subject, short enough to retain attention." I'd say feel free to use that if you like it, but it isn't mine, and I try to credit the TED Talk, though I have forgotten which it was. Story 48. Recover from injury. Studies, so many studies, show that excessive rest is one of the worst things for most soft tissue injuries. Gentle movement is the best. Most people want to be completely sedentary, then jump right back to their previous amount of activities. Story 49. Ever noticed people who frequently claim mastery over a subject, discipline, skill, 99% of the time, when someone openly proclaims themselves to be very good at something, especially when they mention it without anyone asking, do it consistently over a long period of time. They are either totally incompetent or average at best. Real mastery is confident yet silent. Story 50. For me, a recent one was brushing teeth. Pro tip, for toothpaste to work effectively, you should never rinse and not eat drink for 30 minutes after use. Learned this a few months ago, and my teeth are the whitest they have ever been, and have zero issue with dry mouth or bad breath any longer. Story 51. You know those little tamper seals with the flap on top that says pull to open on it? You're supposed to pull it to the side, parallel to the flap, not to the front or back, perpendicular to the flap. You know those hand-operated can openers? You're supposed to puncture the side, not the top of them. It's much smoother and doesn't create jagged edges. Do you keep your pills in a medicine cabinet in your bathroom? The humidity from your bathroom might get into it and ruin your medicine. Likewise, you're not supposed to store your loofah or shower poof in the shower either. Story 52. Underestimate the power of vitamin D and B12 supplementation. As someone who suffers from SAD, works during the daylight hours 5 days a week, and in a mostly overcast area, taking something OTC has helped me a significant amount with the winter blues and lethargy. Story 53. Dealing with insurance claim rejection in the U.S. You can resubmit them. Talk to your healthcare provider about it. Sometimes documentation isn't provided, or something gets mixed up, or there was a misunderstanding with the healthcare provider's arrangement with the insurance company. A rejection of something that is covered according to your plan can be overturned. Please talk to your provider and insurance company to see if something can be done. Story 54. How to use a broom. You sweep with the tips of the bristles. As in, you gently brush the broom on the ground to use it most effectively. The long ends/side of the bristles, lengthwise, do nothing. So when you're sweeping and the bristles are all bent sideways and you're dragging them across the ground, you're doing it wrong. Story 55. Make and drink tea using a tea bag. If YouTube is anything to go by, Americans have somehow convinced themselves that you leave the tea bag in while you drink it. That's grounds for being taken in for psychological examination in the UK. Nobody sane wants tea that gradually gets stronger and stronger. Story 56. That archaeologists spend most of their time excavating. I'm an archaeologist, AOST/NZ, who works in consulting. While it depends on the context of the excavation and the sampling strategy, the general rule of thumb is that for European colonial excavations, 1 week of excavation is about 3 weeks of artifact analysis and maybe the same in writing reports. For indigenous Maori Aboriginal excavations, especially those involving midden sites, for example shellfish and finfish, then 1 week of excavation can mean 3 months or more of artifact faunus analysis and 1-2 months of report writing. In Australia and NZ, hourly rates for archaeologists vary between AUD $90 $180/HR, depending on the level of experience and expertise involved. Analysis may also include radiocarbon dating, which is also not cheap. People think that archaeologists just go in and dig up cool shit and discard the rest. This is not the case. We meticulously analyze the material we excavate and analyze it in order to interpret the site, the way it was used, and the people who used it. As an aside, if your country has laws that require archaeological sites to be investigated prior to developing the land in which they are located, know that it is usually a time-consuming and expensive exercise. Ensure you do your due diligence before buying land, and include archaeology and heritage in that due diligence. Realize that archaeological investigation required by law may cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Story 57. 99% of people type something as a spelling mistake. Less than 1% of people type something to indicate that it was spelled wrong by someone else. That 1% will also make spelling and grammar errors on their own time. But 99% of that 1% of people will call out that 99% of people and not go too into the weeds like this to admit that to err is human. Story 58. Not 99%, but a lot of people tie their shoes wrong, which causes them to come untied a lot easier. If you know the difference between a square knot and a granny knot, a bow is the same thing, but you loop the ends. Lots of people tie their shoes granny knot style, and it slips out much easier. Story 59. Please stop putting library books back on the shelf you took them from. It's often better to leave them neatly on a return cart, on a table, or at the front desk, depending on your library. We scan books that are used without checkout to add them to our circulation statistics. It helps us prove traffic and learn which items engage the community. Flagging items as used in-house doesn't require identifying information either. It's anonymous. Story 60. Prepare. From small outings to big projects. Most people are way too much assisted and don't think for themselves. They just wing it. Expect the infrastructure to take care of their ups, then be upset when they're responsible for the consequences they caused. Having small medic bag in your car is not survivalist or prepping. It's awareness that you could need it and hope you won't. Having a multi-tools, a hand wipe, a bandage in your pockets, or even an EDC. Going on a trip? Check your oil level, tire pressure, restock your spare lamps for the headlights. Have a small medic bag with a foil blanket. Going groceries? Check the traffic on the road and crowding on Google Maps. Check your list and bag. Story 61. Eat, especially or mostly Western cultures. We are so bombarded by merchandising and product placement that we somehow still believe sugar and cereals are a good breakfast, or for example, the amount of sugar some countries eat. Eating behaviors shouldn't be a controversial topic. There are scientific ways of understanding what your body actually needs, can handle. But so many very profitable, very well-connected industries would collapse if people were actually taught how to eat well from a young age. Story 62. In women's public bathroom stalls, there is usually a small stainless steel bin next to the toilet containing paper bags for women to dispose of their menstrual products because they can't be flushed. You are supposed to put those things into the paper bag and then put that bag in the bathroom garbage can. Most women simply put their stuff in the bag, then proceed to place the full bag back into the bin with the other sterile bags. Every time I try to bring this up, I'm told I'm wrong, but I will die on this hill if I have to. Story 63. For me, the big one is cooking. I wouldn't say 99% of people do it wrong, but probably about 85%. So many people cook things at the highest temperature possible and end up just burning shit or overcooking it, or worse, having it overcooked on the outside and then raw on the inside. Story 64. One thing that many people unknowingly do wrong is poor posture. A vast majority of people spend their days sitting or standing with bad posture, slouching, rounding their shoulders, or craning their neck forward. Over time, this can lead to muscle imbalances, back and neck pain, and even long-term spinal issues. The kicker is many people don't realize they're doing it because it becomes habitual. Story 65, putting toilet seat covers on. I always just tore the middle tab off, then I would proceed to cut a small middle section where the toilet seat does not have a cover, the area where people pee. Saw a video on how to properly use one, and my mind was blown. Story 66, think about bankruptcy. If you have more debt than you can hope to pay off in 7 years and are absolutely drowning, bankruptcy is for you. There will be little downside. Talk to a bankruptcy attorney. Varies by state, but you can usually keep your car, home, and all but wildly expensive shit that may be inside. Doesn't work for student loans. Woo bankruptcy! Story 67, selfless actions and selfless love. But to no fault of theirs, 99% of all things deemed selfless are actually self-serving in some way. Even a mother's love would know boundaries if met with hostility and aggression each and every time. No need to argue. Story 68, hoping somebody mentions the disgustingly high rate of incorrectly using the word literally. Absurd that so many reach adulthood and can't figure it out. Also the different variations of your, and their. These people vote, have offspring, etc. Nobody is asking you to cure cancer, but it feels remarkably unacceptable for adults to be this way in this day and age. Story 69. They choose the wrong place to store the value they earn from work, or they spend their money that they traded time for. Every dime a person invests in the stock market will 10x. People think investing is a risk. However, holding government money is a guaranteed loss. Because you can't get ahead piling up money, people give up, or it takes so long they are old. Even if you earn a lot, have millions in the bank, inflation will eventually send you back to work when you're older. The trick: own productivity. Own the units that produce what the world wants and needs. Predict what the future world will reward. Own that, and gain significant buying power. Trade time for money at the start and invest as much as possible. You are paying for your freedom. What else is worth buying? Designer items? No. If you get $10, invest. $3 U.S. index fund with low expenses. $3 pick a stock that will go up a lot in the next 2 years. $3 pick a safe long-term stock winner that will continue to win. $1 buy something riskier with well over 100% returns potential. Just keep adding until the amount you're adding becomes pointless to add. Story 70. Lift heavy stuff. Really use their strength. Most people aren't able to use their strength properly or to the full safe ability they could, because they aren't trained to use the muscle properly. Most humans can pick something up just fine, but they could pick up something 1.5-2x as heavy with about 5 minutes of instruction on how to brace and use the muscles right. Story 71, cleaning a phone screen with alcohol. Modern phones come with an oleophobic coating on the glass, the thing that makes new screens super smooth, easy to clean and scratch, aka friction resistant. Cleaning your screen with alcohol damages the coating and eventually removes it completely. Most quality screen protectors come with the coating as well. Story 72. Executing a right on red turn, or just stopping at a damn red light in general. You come to a complete stop at the stop line, not in the middle of the crosswalk, so you can edge out into traffic to get in front of the poor sap in front of you. Right on red, come to a complete stop at the stop line and ensuring that there is no oncoming traffic, to include pedestrians in the crosswalk. Then when it is safe to do so, conduct your precious turn. If it ain't safe to do so, how about you wait your turn until your light is green? Thanks in advance. Story 73. IDK how it is in other countries, but in Australia, it's really common to not rinse the soap off the dishes after washing them, which is gross and unsanitary LL. Dish soap is only a surfactant and basically just helps the oil and stuff dissolve into water, so if you aren't rinsing it off, it just stays on there. But now with added soap, so double whammy of unclean, and now also eating soap, both of which can cause stomach irritation. Story 74. I feel like most people engage in activities, fashion, and social trends and the wrong people in regards to friends, relationships, and careers. We focus too much on what may look desirable and attractive, but it's not who we are individually, personally, or what we want to be. We always discover we're in the wrong path of something after far too long of being on it. Story 75. The fallacy of holding on to sunk costs. For example, let's say you buy an exercise bike that you never use, and you know you'll never use. It sits in your room taking up space because you can't bear to get rid of it because you paid so much for it. You already paid for it. You are not getting your money back whether you get rid of it or keep it, so you might as well get rid of it. Story 76. Communicate. Most people don't say what they want to say or advocate for themselves when they should, preferring to delay or avoid tough conversations to their own detriment. And people that aren't conflict avoidant often fail at conflict resolution because they're more concerned with being right or making a point and thinking this is the goal. than they are with actually resolving the issues at hand, and reaching any sort of agreeable compromise or result that works for everyone involved. Story 77, mopping. Most people wring the mop out first, then use the damp mop to wipe the floor. That's not mopping. You're supposed to put the soaking wet mop directly onto the floor without wringing it out. After thoroughly wetting the floor, then wring out the mop and use it to mop up the liquid off the floor. Story 78, thinking. People suck at logic and have no idea how many fallacies and pitfalls of reasoning they fall into. Then they get defiant and double down when it's pointed out, studies show. People have all kinds of views on philosophical topics and zero background in or idea of what philosophy is. A philosophy PhD makes it extremely hard to have to engage in any sort of reasoning with people who don't have a philosophy background. Just so many batshit awful thoughts and justifications flying around for wildly audacious claims that people casually and flippantly help themselves to without understand entailments or contradictions. Absolutely wild what the absolute cluster of reasoning is for most people, if there's any at all. Story 79. Lots of things having to do with drinking alcohol can respond better when I'm sober, but honestly just the way that people drink beer straight from the bottle or can. It's best to pour it into a glass first, as that helps release carbonation and prevent the metallic taste coming from a can. Story 80. Breathe. Bunch of slimy mouth breathers out there, be careful. Some people don't use their diaphragm. I was blown away. My wife has all sorts of problems with upper back neck because she is a chest breather. I did not know that was a thing. Tip of your tongue, roof of your mouth. Story 81. They don't hold themselves accountable in relationships or just for dignity's sake. They spend more than they should instead of thinking ahead and putting some aside for emergencies. They have kids, but don't seem very interested in showing them the way to do things or letting them know they love them by saying it. They think the kids raise themselves or the schools are supposed to. They take a lot for granted, like the ability to walk, speak, see, share, listen, and learn. They overstretch themselves financially and then rant about it to other people who aren't necessarily doing well themselves. They talk too loud, like yell at the person right next to them. They use their phones on speaker at full volume in public. When a movie has started, they don't whisper or STFU. They see everything as a competition, even their friends. They root for groups of super talented and overpaid athletes who don't know or care they exist, as if the game somehow is an eternal struggle for world domination or something, when really it's just entertainment and an exhibition of skill. I can praise certain players, but I don't get the team loyalty thing or the violence against other fans. You live in a certain city or go to a certain school. Big whoop. Those teams exist with or without your blood, sweat, tears, or obsession for merch. They think they have enemies when in fact they're just other people. They don't want to admit to themselves no one is personally plotting against them. Story 82. I'm an artist, and when I see non-artists draw, they do the sketch very messily, which is okay. But then when they do line art that go over every single sketch line, you're supposed to go over it smoothly. What's the point in line art if it's a copy and paste of the sketch? They also act like they have no idea what lines go where. Like when I sketch, I know exactly what I'm doing with linear after. I make smooth lines and I know what I'm supposed to do, linear over. But for some reason, even though they drew it, they don't know what lines they shouldn't go over. It's always confused me. Story 83, pronouncing the name Craig, or at least I think we do anyway. Most Americans, myself included, pronounce it like Craig. I listened to a podcast called Script Notes, and one of the hosts is Craig Mazin, and he pronounced it like one would assume is correct if you just saw it as a new word, like Craig. Story 84. I see a lot of people that really need to raise their bike seats and give their knees a break. This is especially prevalent in college towns. Yeah, getting on and off is easier, but the other 95% of using a bike becomes miserable. If one leg isn't straight at full cadence, you need to raise your seat. Also wear a helmet, you soon to be dummies. Story 85. Use a microwave. A friend said she hated her microwave because it heats unevenly, and I told her that's because she uses it wrong. She got all pissy and said, "Oh yeah, obviously I don't know how to use a microwave." I then explained to her to reduce the power level and increase the time proportionally. You don't throw everything on your stove at 100%. The look of recognition that she was using the microwave wrong was priceless. Story 86. Diet, LOL. So much BS. Calories in, calories out. You're unique. Figure out your own balance. If you're fat AF, stop eating so much. If you're skinny, eat more. It's not about what you eat, it's how many calories you take in. If you want to be fit, just hit your protein macros, fats, or carbs. Other than that doesn't matter. If you're predisposed to very certain conditions, adjust accordingly to the macros then. Wham bam. No, you don't need to follow SR Juiced a lot on YouTube to tell you how to get in shape. Your keywords to achieve this: persistence, perseverance, Sorry you're not doing any progress in a month or less. Work at it every day no matter what. No matter what. Story 87. Peeling a banana. In order to pull all of the strings off all at once, you turn the banana over, and instead of peeling it by the stem, peel it by the bottom. Locking a drill bit into an actual drill. Most people think you lock a drill bit in a regular drill by tightening up the chuck and calling it a day. But what you're actually supposed to do is once you tighten it by hand with the chuck, turn the chuck back one click. And it will prevent the chuck from unscrewing itself if you reverse the drill in the opposite direction. Try it. And this trick is never printed in a drill manual either.